We are thrilled to welcome back Tom Barrack and Laird Hamilton to USC tonight. So, what does a big-time investor and a big-wave surfer have in common? Turns out a lot. Both are outliers in their field, contrarians, and possess unique perspectives on evaluating and taking risks. They're also very close friends. Tom Barrack is one of the most successful real estate investors in the world. His firm, Colony Capital, has offices in 12 cities across 9 different countries and has invested $60 billion in assets around the globe. That's 60 billion with a B. Tom is a contrarian investor who has made a living taking calculated risks at opportune times. When the Greif Center honored him in 2005 as our Entrepreneur of the Year, he correctly predicted the coming recession and said, quote, "I'm not buying anything right now, except maybe casinos," close quote. And he was right. It's no surprise that Fortune magazine dubbed him the world's greatest real estate investor. Tom is a citizen of the world, but his home and heart are here at USC. Tom is a 2-time Trojan, a university trustee, and he and his family made a transformative gift to renovate our undergraduate business building, which will be renamed Barrack Hall to acknowledge his family's generosity. Many members of his family are here today. Let's please thank the Barracks for their generous gift to USC. And most importantly, he has entrusted us with his most valued asset, his son Nick, who is a freshman here at USC. Hello, Nick. Didn't think I'd let you get away. And with Tom is his friend Laird Hamilton, the preeminent big wave surfer in the world. Laird has chased and conquered waves that defy the imagination. 30, 50, 80, some say up to 100 feet in height. From the north shore of Maui to Tahiti to anywhere conditions are right for ungodly sized waves, you'll find Laird and his team attempting the unthinkable. Laird also is a pioneer and an inventor. He co-invented tow-in surfing, popularized stand-up paddleboarding, and is the master of foil boarding. If it's on water, Laird is doing it, and doing it at the highest levels. For all you superhero fans out there, I've got news for you. There is no Superman. Batman does not exist. But Aquaman? Aquaman is for real, and he goes by the name of Laird Hamilton. Hit it. Please welcome Tom Barrack and Laird Hamilton.
Thanks, Dave.
It is great having you guys here. Thanks for coming in all the way from Santa Monica and from Hawaii.
Yep, Hawaii.
When did you get in town?
Last night.
Last night?
Yeah.
And thank you for putting this together, Tom. The things that you do for USC, both noticed and unnoticed, just are so generous. So thank you for arranging this.
I love being at a school which tried to kick me out every semester for 4 years. It's fulfillment finally.
He doesn't realize what I'm going to ask him to do, so I haven't told him yet. It's going to be a surprise.
Well, everyone loves surprises. So this is a bit of a home game for Tom, but he's been here. He knows the drill. Bit of an away game for you. So you came in from Kauai. Why do you split your life between Hawaii and Malibu?
Oh, well, I mean, originally it was because when I met my wife, she played professional volleyball, and her season was during the summer, and my season was during the winter. And I said, I promise I'll spend the summer with you if you promise you'll spend the winter with me in Hawaii. And it seemed like we both agreed pretty quickly that was fun. So we started that way, and then we just haven't ended. We haven't ended that. That seems like a natural progression. It's almost becomes almost like migration. Like a migration process where we just, it's time to go. It gets cold, the days get short, there's not enough sunlight to get tired. Time to go, time to go back to to the islands, and then when it's, at the end of the season, the surf's flat, and it's time to go back to summertime in California.
So you're there during those times because the conditions are best for the things that you need to see, right?
Absolutely.
In the winter. And sort of interesting twist, but you're an environmentalist, you're a protector of the ocean, a steward of the water, but climate change is actually good for you, isn't it?
Well, I mean, yeah, there's selfish motives, but I mean, the way at least it seems that the Earth's weather is being affected in a way that's creating bigger storms. I mean, it's creating longer periods of flat spells, but hotter temperatures, colder water, hotter water. I mean, these temperature gradients create more powerful storms, which in my selfish ambition creates bigger waves.
So good for business.
Yeah, good for fun.
And Tom, how did the two of you meet and become friends, and what is it that connects you?
Laird was advertising for somebody who had a modicum of low intelligence and could be a surf Sherpa, and that was me. Actually, about a decade ago, our business is a private equity firm. So our shareholders, our unit holders, are financial institutions. But what we do every day is practice risk. We're investing widows and orphans and policemen and firemen's pension funds. But we're trying to create extraordinary returns, not ordinary returns. So very complicated mathematical functions that Professor Potts and Knapp and you all deal with our wonderful kids who are picking up the arrows in the quiver. But the bottom line is, how do you practice risk? For everybody sitting out saying, well, this is great, I'm sitting here and I'm getting the best education for 4 years, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to nail it, I'm going to do it, which is probably creating Snapchat for most of you, but it's that, right? It's that risk profile. So I looked around and I said, who of all the people that I know and respect practices that risk envelope at every aspect of their life? Push a little too hard without the proper preparation and you die. Don't push hard enough and you're ordinary. And the man who was daunting in that arena was Laird. So I called him up and I said, look, I've got a goofy idea for you. And he said, what, are we going to Tahiti, Indonesia? I said, no. You're going into the bowels of something that's more violent than anything you've ever seen, which is Wall Street. And so I sent out a notice. We had, at that time, about 150 investors. Most of them have never seen the sea. They've seen calculators and mathematical models and IRRs, but they had never seen the sea. So then they really thought I had lost my mind. Of all the crazy things I had done, now the guest speaker at the investor conference is Laird. And I have to tell you, he laid them away. Every investor to a T said it was the best presentation that they had ever seen or ever heard. And the analogies to what he does every day as an inventor, and you'll see over the course of the evening, it's not that he's an athlete. It's the steel integrity of a man who practices excess in every aspect of his life: honesty, courage, power, commitment, dedication, humility, kindness, gentleness. When all that blends together into this necklace of there is no risk, because he's prepared for that moment for the 30 years prior to then. And that was what led us to it.
Well, I'm glad you did that talk, because that was the foundation for this happening. I'll give you 2 minutes on how this all came together very quickly. So last August, you may remember, Hurricane Marie comes through Southern California, creates some sizable swells for us, maybe not for Laird, but sizable swells off the coast of Malibu. And of course, Laird is out there doing something that just is not normal. And one of the onlookers on the beach records and posts it to YouTube. Have you guys seen this? So let's take a look at this shot from Malibu last August. Just what a typical day in Laird's life looks like. So he's probably looking at it like that's a layup on a Nerf rim for him, probably. It's like so easy. But so I see that thing, and I shoot the link to Tom with the following subject. It just says, "Your friend is a badass. Let's get him to USC." In 5 minutes, Tom writes back, "Done. Schedule it." So thank you, Tom, for arranging it, making it happen.
Okay. Just one cute story as an afterthought. Just showing you what the guy is like. So, he waited for that wave, allowing everybody in front of him, all of the novices and amateurs. It's just like life, right? Here you have the best, most capable guy in the world to whom everybody should be bowing and allowing him to go. And he's waiting and allowing everybody to clear out of deference to them. And after this wave, he comes back to shore, and of course it's getting a little more violent and a little more rippy. So in the afternoon before the sun went down, he saved 2 lives after he shoots the pier, and this is Laird's average day.
Saw it on the news. Literally Laird goes, yeah, we had to take a couple people out, and you just are always around that stuff. So you sort of got the superhero quality. If it's happening in the water, you're around.
It's more out of just what you do naturally in that situation. You'd like to say that it's some, you have an ulterior motive or something like that, but it's just, I think as a person, as a human, when you see somebody in need, that's what you do. And, when you grow up in Hawaii in the kind of conditions that we grew up in, you're saving people all the time. We tell people stories when you're 10 years old, you're telling adult tourists, you shouldn't go in the water over there. You might drown. And the guy says, oh, hey, punk kid, don't tell me what to do. And before you know it, the guy's, out to sea, and, either they drowned or it's almost a reaction. It's a reaction to a situation that you don't, because if you thought about it, that would be too much time. You wouldn't be able to help. So it's just more like a reaction to a need that you see that's before you. So you just respond.
Excellent. So we're gonna talk up here for about another 40 minutes. Then we're gonna open to questions, students, just so you know the routine. But before we get up to the primary topics of risk and fear and comfort zones and all those great things that just Tom Barrack is the expert on, I want to go back and just hear a little bit about your upbringing.
I'd like to first of all, I'd like to say something that I think one thing that it's hard for people to imagine the relationship that I have with Tom, but people go, oh, this surfer, that surfer, this surfer, and I go, I really don't know them, and I really have more in common with Tom than I do with probably 99% of the people that I surf with, and it has to do with the way your mind works, and I have more in common with other people that are great at what they do and I have more in common with them than I do with other people, that just because people think, oh, you surf, then you like other surfers. There's a great Greek proverb, the blacksmith hates the blacksmith, but not in this case, I relate to Tom really well. I think that's why I am here. That's why we bonded a friendship, because we have mathematical minds, and mine is in the ocean, and his is in financing, but he's a surfer too at heart. So let's not avoid that part.
It's funny. We're going to cover that when we get to sort of. By the way, Tom's credentials as his own badass are legit, and we'll show some pictures that he doesn't know we have later. But no, he's done some things that you shake your head at as well. So let's go back, just to give him a little context. Where were you born, and where did you grow up?
Well, I was born in San Francisco, but my mom moved to Hawaii before I was, when I was 6 months old. Which, being born in California and moving to Hawaii was probably a detriment to me. It ends up being a blessing. But growing up, wasn't helpful. It would have been nice if I could tell all the Hawaiians that I was born there, because that would give me one little bit of edge. But I had blonde hair and I wasn't born there, so that kind of left me in a minority situation. So I grew, and I'm not here to complaining. Oh, I was poor, born a poor child. But the reality is, I was a minority in Hawaii, and lived that way. Had in school, it was you like girls, but they liked you, but you really couldn't go out with them because the brothers would probably want to smash your head, and the dad wouldn't allow it or whatever. So I had that kind of reality. That was I wasn't the captain of the football team. I was, my thing was I used to say they don't have to like you, but they'll respect you. And I think I think I was blessed with a mechanism to do things that are dangerous. I think I have something in me that allows me to do that. But Hawaii was a breeding ground for me to kind of go through the tempering process that turned me into the person that I am. The process wasn't fun. being, as you grow and you're just in that environment, the schooling wasn't great. My mom had to work hard to support us, and I always say my mom raised, some sons and a few men, but I lived in that environment, but that's what, the ocean was the one place that I found equality, and that's where I went there, and Hawaii was the perfect place because, surfing is the sport of kings in Hawaii, and the Hawaiians are the founders of surfing, and that was that was where you could go, and it didn't matter how much money or what color you were, or it was all about your, what you could do there.
So you say you felt like an outsider because you didn't look like everybody else, and
yeah, I used to dream about being, waking up and being a giant Hawaiian. I honestly, just wake up and I'd come and just be like a huge Hawaiian and just be like
come here and
but
play.
I had that same blonde hair and that same little skinny rail body. So.
And so felt like an outsider, channeled the energy to surfing. But I say, where were you born? What were you born in?
Well, there's a misconceptions about a bathysphere, but my mom I was a study at the University of San Francisco. I wasn't a study, but they were doing a study about birthing, and my mom got free hospital expenses because they put this big vacuum on her stomach and expanded the stomach and let the fetus move in the womb more freely. They said it was supposed to have all kinds of effects. It's had a few. I'm not sure about some of them. But no. But that bathysphere, people think I was born in the water. It wasn't really the water, but it was this process to let the fetus move in the womb.
I thought. There's
and they said it had positive effects. I'm not sure which ones those were, but they just don't do it because of there's so many kids getting born. They can't have a woman coming every 4 days after during their last trimester to. Had a vacuum suck
I just
on
thought
stomach.
you were actually born in salt water. That's the movie will dramatize it that way. Tom, local guy, Culver City. Give us a little bit about your background and what led you to USC.
Very, very similar to Laird. He had an unbelievably powerful mom who was unrelenting. I had an unbelievably powerful immigrant mom. I came from a very normal Lebanese immigrant family. The only thing worse than getting pounded every day on the way home because I had black curly hair, and I told everybody I was Irish when I was at school because they thought Lebanese was a sexual preference. They didn't know there was a nationality. So what Laird isn't telling you is every day he came home from school, every day he got the squat pounded out of him going home. And the only thing worse to confront was his mother when he wasn't coming home bloody, because then she knew he didn't go to school. Same thing with my mom. For some reason, there were two kids at the end of the block, the Estoya brothers. I'll never forget, because I went to find them later in life. And I'd walk them. For some reason, they just had to pulverize me every time I went by the park. So I started running around the edges of the park. And I got home one day. I went to a Catholic school. So the trauma of seeing my mother having me bloodied again was unbelievable. So I walked. My mom said, well, "What happened? Did you walk home a different way?" I said, "No, I walked home that way." She said, "What'd you do?" I said, "I walked around the park the other way." She grabbed me by the back of my shirt, marched me down the street, marched me up to the Estoya door. She said, "When he opens the door, you punch him in the face." I said, "Mom, you want me to die? You've got to be joking." This was my mother. That was the beginning of the end of the story. But it was a normal, wonderful life. But I had a father who worked 7 days a week, who I never saw, who was one of the greatest men that I ever knew. But my mom always used to tell me, you learn what a man is by listening to your mother, but you learn how to be a man by watching your father. And I never forgot that. So that endless effort, the dedication, the commitment, the idea of excellence and not being ordinary. He always used to say, you have two choices in life. If you like the opera, you can either listen to the opera or you can play in the opera. And if you listen to the opera, you're going to have the disease of ease. You'll be ordinary and you'll never find relevance. It stuck in my mind, and I think one thing Laird and I have in common is finding that fulfillment, which all with all the kids, all the students, it's the same thing, right? You find relevance when you get to the edge. And I've tried to practice that all my life because I was ordinary. I was never the smartest in school. I was never the best athlete. I never had any of those tools. So I had to find another tool as I was moving along. And one of those tools I found was preparation and perseverance. And quite honestly, absorbing more pain than anybody else could. So I always say, yeah, my key to success is I'm stupid enough that I can absorb more pain than others. But I had a great Jesuit education, SC Law School, and then got shipped off to the desert, and one thing led to another.
So went to Loyola High School, came here, played some rugby while you were here.
I did.
Played some rugby, two-time MVP. Do we have some pictures of Tom as a rugby player at USC?
Oh,
Number
no.
58. Number 58.
Oh,
Look at the
God.
hops on the right side. Serious vertical, Tom.
Yeah,
So
that's Bob Klein, number 84. Bob Klein was the tight end for the Chargers. Jack O'Malley, it was a great era. Funny story, just showing you my athletic prowess, how good I really was. I was a walk-on at SC under the John McKay regime. So I walked out. I was a mediocre and average athlete at Loyola, so I thought I was going to get better with age. So I walked onto the field the first day, and John McKay, it was way before your time, but McKay had this sense of humor that was really sick. So he walked over to me at the end of the day, and he said, "Kid, come over here. What's your name?" And I said, "Barrack." He said, "Army?" Yeah, I said, "Yeah." He said, "I have good news and bad news. Which would you like first?" I said, "Well, give me the bad news." He says, "You have no chance of ever playing football at USC. So what's the good news?" He said, "Since you have very little talent, but a lot of energy and initiative, go over there to the rugby field." and that was it.
John McKay could spot great talent.
He did.
Great advice. We talked about what Colony does in the intro. Can you give us? You guys are very big in hospitality. Can you tell us some of the chains and brands that we would know that your funds are major investors in?
Yeah, our modus operandi had always been contrarian themes. Again, going back to saying if you're investing in normal investment patterns, it's just like all of you in school. Then if you're the number one smartest person in that category, you're probably going to do okay. But if you're number 2 or 3, you better have another gig, right? You better have some distinguishing characteristic. So we kind of learned early on that these contrarian themes, if you're disciplined, you buy when everybody wants to sell, and you sell when everybody wants to buy. Very complicated investment pattern. And hospitality was that, right? Hospitality is a very difficult business. So over the years, we bought companies, and our modus operandi was buy, fix, and sell. So we bought the Westin Hotel Company and carved it up into pieces. So the Plaza Hotel to Donald Trump, and the Mauna Kea to a Japanese group. And we've owned Fairmont and Raffles and Swiss Hotels and Accor and Atlantis and One and Only and Aman Hotels and a variety of hotels in Hawaii, the Orchid at Mauna Lani, the Hilton, Waikoloa, on and on and on, and just buying them, fixing them, and holding them. But it's really not much. This private equity piece is pretty common. As a matter of fact, coming over here, I saw an interesting thing. I was walking by Tommy Trojan, there's that little pond, and I saw this girl reach over and pick up a little frog. And she picked up the frog, and the frog said, "Thank you so much, man. Finally, somebody has rescued me." She said, "This is unbelievable. You're a talking frog." I said, "Yes, I am." She said, "Well, what happened to you?" I said, "Well, I was a private equity finance mogul, and a wicked witch came along and put this spell on me and said that I would remain a frog until some beautiful damsel came along and kissed me." And she said, "That's interesting." She put the frog in her pocket. She then walked over to the 901 Club, went in for a drink, put the little frog on the table, and the frog sang, but ma'am, did you forget to kiss me?" She said, "Not really. Right now you're worth a lot more to me as a talking frog than a private equity." And it's a pretty common thing.
His earlier career was a lawyer, so he likes the private equity jokes better than the lawyer jokes. Both of these guys are fiercely competitive and show it in different ways. Tom's business, they have a scorecard. They have ROI and they have profit and ways to return to their funds. Laird, you wanted to be great from a young age, but you didn't take the competitive route in surfing. Why is that?
Well, my stepfather was a competitor, and I watched the sorrow it brought him, and I really vowed to not let my performance or my happiness be dictated by others, especially a group of judges. And so I just wanted to do it any other way but that way. I just go, I know I don't want that. I didn't necessarily know exactly what I wanted, but I did know what I didn't want, and I didn't want a panel of judges, so-called experts, dictating ultimately my success and failure, and ultimately my happiness. Somebody just going, oh, well, that wasn't good enough, or that, and so, that was probably the nucleus of it. And then I found that the format would just bring out the most aggressive part of my personality, and I was already much too aggressive. I needed to figure out a way to channel it, not pump it up. So I started to look for other routes, and I felt like, if I could just, if I was able to ride the biggest waves the best, it didn't really matter what anybody said.
It's so interesting, because in everything, people tend to use other people as a reference, either for validation, approval, to score yourself, and it really is a futile exercise in most instances to compare yourself to anybody. So for you to know that early on shows some maturity that I don't think many of us have. I don't know if it was Pete Carroll or the Grateful Dead that said, you don't want to be the best one doing something, you want to be the only one doing it. And that's sort of what you did. Took it from the competitive side to being, I want to set the standard for this other type of surfing. You, in your household, you're married to Gabby Reese, who's a professional volleyball player and model. She's quite competitive as well, correct?
Yes.
I had a very brief conversation with her last week where we were all supposed to be on a conference call. She jumped on just to say Laird's going to be a few minutes. And so, I figured this is a good chance to ask her for a volleyball game. So I was like, hey, Gabby, it's Dave Belasco. It'd be great to grab a game of volleyball with you when you guys are back in Malibu. Just totally warming up to her. She says, great, bring your wallet. And hangs up. So those are the only words I've ever spoken to her. So now she's got inside my, she's playing mind games with me, and
you've lost already.
Yeah, I probably have lost.
Yeah, we don't play backgammon or volleyball against each other anymore. I've ridden in the back of the truck too many times on the way home with the dogs.
So tonight, the primary topic is risk, but we're going to talk around it. So let's start talking about that. How do you look at risk, Tom and Laird, and you guys jump in? How do you look at risk, and what mental and physical preparation go into improving the odds, because that's really what it's about, improving the odds and decreasing the risk?
Oh, why don't I start with the mundane? And since I studied Laird and have used him for a model, including how to submit to my wife, Rochelle, he really led me this with Gabby, which is true, is this risk is not a moment. Risk is a way of life, and the way of life is this confluence of body, mind, soul. And that sounds like a bunch of garbage, but it's really true. So if you look at your relationships in school today, you've got relationships with faculty, you have relationships in the dorms, you have relationships in the Greek system, you have relationships with your friends and with your mates. And then you have goals and aspirations. But the truth is, when you're in school, you have no clue really what's going to happen. And fear is at every corner, because uncertainty is what enters every aspect of your breath. And risk is about taking that uncertainty and saying, that's my advantage. My advantage is being prepared at every moment for uncertainty. And the way you're going to be prepared is to hone the body, mind, soul by habits, by discipline, by focus, by integrity, so that unexpected moment is just part of what it is. I mean, Laird will tell you, in perfect conditions, a lot of ordinary surfers can ride a 15-foot wave. But when they get caught in the impact zone, it's a different story. So you prepare for the worst moment. You don't prepare for the best moment. And the ability to adapt and change without being caught up in remorse of the past and expectations of the future. You know, this idea of being in the moment is about discipline, preparation, practice, focus, mentally, physically, and the little habits all along the way. So the most powerful people that you would look at, in my opinion, who take risk, who are in awe of, are the most gentle, are the most kind, are the most compassionate, are the most forgiving, have the least hubris, have the most humility. Why is that? Because they found the security of relevance in their life. It's not about power, it's not about who has the best GPA, it's not about who has the best AT, it's not about who gets into the best business school. You know, if that were the case, it'd be really simple, right? Because we could all choose people and say, I know who are going to be the most self-fulfilled, happy, wonderful people in the world. It's the top 5% of all of these groups. And as we all know, that has no relevance to anything. So risk at every point you have to practice. How do you practice risk? Right? If you wanted to climb Mount Everest, the best thing to do is not to go climb Mount Everest. But how do you simulate climbing Mount Everest? So I think what we both do, and Laird in a much more exciting and practical way, is figure out ways to practice risk. I mean, extreme sports for me is that. I happen to be nutty in the first place. But really, to practice my trade, risking billions of dollars of other people's money is not a great way to practice, right? If I went to my investors and said, look, you guys, I need to warm up a little bit, right? Right? It's like paying a lawyer. As a lawyer, I was so thrilled when I came out of law school and I went to work for another set of Trojans. But I used to say, they're going to pay me more money to research more because I know less, right? How does that work? So you've got to figure out ways of challenging those little insecurities inside of yourself, which then allow you to be prepared for that unexpected moment and adapt to where you're going to go. And for all of you, that's the key, right? It's just getting inertia going someplace. Just getting out of the pack and saying, I want to be extraordinary, I don't want to be ordinary, and that's a risk. I'm going to have to take rejection, which, especially now in a virtual society, you know, being rejected by Tinder is being a little bit different than being rejected by some girl slamming a door in your face. But that experience of having somebody slam a door in your face, or somebody saying, no, I don't really want to go to a dance with you, starts building that steel caliber that gives you the strength the next time. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah, well, that's why Tom and I see eye to eye, because it's exactly the same approach that you'd I mean, you know, Tom just said it, you know, fear of what could happen stops most people from doing everything. And I think both Tom and I grew up in an environment where because of how we were socially, we weren't worried. It's like I used to say, I don't mind if somebody doesn't like, you know, it doesn't bother me when people don't like me, because, you know, I've done things that people, when I do something and people don't like it, I'm like, well, that no problem. I have people not liking me for how I was born. Why would it upset me if I'm worried about, you know, the things that I do? And so I think fear of failure probably is the number one thing that stops people from really doing dangerous things. I think that, and then the willingness to risk too. That willingness to go out and put yourself on the line and you know, and be present. That's the key too. I think sometimes we'll look back and if you're letting anything else distract you other than just the immediacy, I use mountain climbing as an example. You're on a 2,000-foot face, you're hanging on the ledge, and you're there. The only thing you're looking at right now is the toe grip, the other toe grip, the hand grab, not the 2,000 below, not the another 1,000 above. It's the next grip, the next grab. You know, it's that, and that's living in the moment. That's the immediacy. That's what protects you. And I, you know, my preparation when I go into, you know, if I'm going to go out and the surf's going to be 100 feet high and I'm going to go risk my life, we get real methodical. We start moving slow. You find that slowing down actually gives you time. You get time to do the right thing, and that what happens normally in dangerous situations is people have a tendency to speed up, and all that does is make the moment happen quicker, which gives you less time to do the right thing. And so, I find myself really slowing down, and sometimes time is not actually slowing down. It's actually your thought process and your assessment is speeding up, which is slowing time down. Which is, like I tell somebody, if you want to make slow motion, you speed the film up. If you want to create time in a moment, you speed up the assessment, right? You speed up your awareness. Then you have time, and things become less dangerous when you've been through them 1,000 times. People go, "Oh, you rode a 100-foot wave." Yeah, but I've crashed on a 1-foot wave. I've crashed on a 2-foot wave. I've crashed on a 3-foot. Every single way along, I've crashed at every single foot along the way. So you get, I describe it as the art of crashing, where you get a skill at wiping out, and all of a sudden it's that wipeout, which would be fatal to someone else, just becomes a wipeout for you, and then you're up and you're going, and the damage is a lot less as well. But risk is about living. That's about feeling alive. I think if you're not willing to feel that sensation, you're missing one of the most incredible feelings that there are to experience on this plane. It's like, that because the reward of the fulfillment you get when you succeed, that's what it's about. That's what makes you sleep good at night. That's what Tom said, to get contentment. I go, that's what you're going to look for. The number one thing, and I'm a parent, and I said, listen, if I can just figure out how to raise content humans, I'll feel like, I've been successful. And first of all, you got to figure out for yourself, because you want to lead by example. It's like, people watch you, they go, well, what are you saying and what are you doing? They're watching what you're doing. It doesn't matter what you're saying. And so at the end, it's about that example of, be the person that you want people to respect. Be the person that you want to look up at. And risk is all about that. Be the person that assesses the risk. I know how I'm going to react in a situation of danger. I already know. I've been there so many times. I can rely on that person to do the right thing. Doesn't mean that there's not a chance of not making it. Doesn't mean that there's not a chance of failure. That's always present. But I think that's a critical part of it.
And it's interesting because you think about if you're not into high-risk sports and the adrenaline stuff that you're talking about, the risks that ordinary humans face and fears are, fear of embarrassment, fear of what are my parents going to say, fear of losing some money, fear of, wasting some time. The stakes are much higher for you, and yet so many of us, it's human to be, to be slowed by fear. That's sort of innate in us.
But but honestly, that is the real, we have the luxury to have that a girl turning us down on a date that's a luxury. Like these new set of fears that we have, we've just taken this need for fear and implemented these new things to bring into our lives to make them fulfill that part, because we don't have dinosaurs chasing us and giant things trying to eat us and environments trying to kill us. So we make up a new set of fears that we need to subject ourselves to, because ultimately we need fear. Yeah. Because without fear, we would have never evolved and we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be sitting here. There wouldn't be humans if they didn't know to be scared. But it's, again, the most important thing with fear is the use of it. What do you do with it? How do you use it? And, are you the one that you're scared, you don't move, and then the truck runs you over? Or are you the one that you're scared and you jump 10 feet high in the air and the truck goes by and you land and you make it? So it's all how you harness that energy. But that energy is as real as love and hate and all these other energies that exist. And fear is one that is a mandatory in existence. We have to have it. Yeah. We need it and cultivate it. And at the end, cultivate it on a wave, cultivate it in an investment, cultivate it somewhere. But learn how to use it. Learn how to use that as strength. Learn how to use it. Make you smarter. I guarantee you. Tom was fast on the rugby team because he ran from those guys down at the park every day. It's like you know. At the end, this is all stuff.
Or his mother.
Yeah. That too, or you can't go faster than a flying frying pan. But I think that's important. I think it's important to learn how to harness that and use that, and the whole concept of no fear and all that stuff. For me, that's ignorance. That's foolishness. If you're not scared of losing everybody's money or falling off a cliff, then you got something to learn.
But I think one thing. So you come to a great school like USC, and what are you here for? Besides the great-looking guys, the hot chicks, the great sports teams, the blend of what's there. So it's a common denominator. So everybody, regardless of what their talents and attributes are, finds basically this common denominator. And after a while, you start saying, well, I've got to blend into this common denominator. And you're unsure really what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and you spend a lot of time concentrating on your weaknesses, which is a total waste of time, by the way. So this idea of a well-rounded person, I think, is a total useless idea. It's the same as everything to mediocrity, right? In moderation. Everybody hates moderation. None of you have boyfriends or girlfriends or wives or husbands that are moderate. You do for a while and then you lose them, right? You want extraordinary people. You want extraordinary things, and you want to take the strength that you have and exponentially blow that up. But you need tools in your toolkit to do that. So this isn't the point or the time to really do that. But at a certain point, a guy like Laird sits here and says, I've got a gift. And he's an inventor. It's not that he's an athlete. He's got a mind that he takes nothing per chance. When he's paddling down that last paddle into a 50-foot wave, or the last drop into a 100-foot wave when he's towing in, he's prepared for that for the previous 20 years. Every mathematical angle, every piece of equipment, every team, the people on the jet ski, the motor on the jet ski, the rope, his inflatable, everything that he's got. It's not happenstance that he got there. But he didn't get there by being a violinist. So when somebody says you need to take a fine arts program, right, to round out your surfing skill, that may be interesting, but you're not going to be extraordinary doing that. So it's a waiting game for all of you in school. You're sitting here saying, I have some extraordinary talents and I have some ordinary talents, but I'm going to excel at all these things that the environment that academia is telling me I should be good at. And the odds are most of you are not going to do that. It's just not likely that everybody can be good at everything. So along the way, you're going to find the thing that you have passion about. You're going to find that thing that you love or you like, and you should just nail it. Just load up the pickup truck, forget everything else, forget moderation, go to excess immediately and pour it on. And if you fail now, it's the greatest thing that can happen. I guarantee you, Laird learned more from his wipeouts, more from being in the impact zone, more from being crushed than he ever did from the thrill of riding that 100-foot wave. For me, every great failure that I had, and I've had hundreds of them, led to a better success that I never knew was around the corner. So what happened out of taking risk, those failures, after a while, I learned all I had to do is wait a little while, right? I tell my kids, I think Nick is here, I always talk about the karma bank, right? There is a karma bank. I promise you there's a karma bank. So you have to deposit 150%, and along your life you can withdraw 100%. The only problem is it doesn't happen exactly when you need it.
Or want it. Yeah.
Right? But you wait a little while. So when you're taking these risks, if you're in integrity, and this I think is the key for young people, it doesn't happen just by being good in a class. It doesn't happen just from being a good athlete. It doesn't happen by not being generous or kind or compassion or have integrity all around you, right? If you act like you have great manners and elegance in one sphere, and as soon as you're gone, you're bitching and groping and complaining about somebody else, the person that you're with looks and says, wow, right? There's a little tarnish on the edge of that. So this continuity of building those habits that you have an opportunity to now, the little things, the invisible things, the baby steps, is what will give you that shield against risk, because you don't mind failure. right? All you can do is fail. And if you fail out of integrity, that door is going to open someplace else, and it's going to be bigger and brighter than everything. I think both of us agree. I still don't know where I'm going. People talk about a 5-year plan. I don't have a 5-hour plan.
Well,
My wife can attest to it.
And it's the relentless pursuit too. So it's the willing to failure, and then the pursuit, and Gabby laughs at me every time, because once I get my nose on something, it just doesn't. I mean, I've had a couple projects that literally I'm 15 years in, and I just am relentless in my pursuit. It just doesn't, and I'll get deviated, and I'll have bumps along the way, and get distracted. But I just continue to come back, and I continue to pursue relentlessly. And I always say, don't be the monkey that sees and does. Be the monkey that doesn't see and does. See the unseen. Believe, see it without. And that's why I like to be creative. I think that's the fun part for me, is to be able to envision something that I haven't seen before done, and that doesn't exist, but that I see possible. And then you do that, and you do that once, and you're like, oh, it becomes a formulaic process. You're like, idea, relentless pursuit, lots of failure, a couple ups, and then all of a sudden, wow, success, it worked. And then people from the outside go, wow, that guy just came up with that. That's pretty amazing. And meanwhile, they don't realize that the relentless pursuit of that, the passion that it takes to do that, and that relentless pursuit has to do with, means that, hey, you're not staying up drinking all night, and it means you're it's like, if it's a physical pursuit, you're taking care of the physical body. If it's a pursuit of finance, you're learning every single little thing, and learning, all the pieces, and pursuing with relentless passion that you're just not going to be, other than just a truck running you over, you're just not going to not do it.
and that integrity works. Just a cute story. I was a very ordinary undergraduate student, because I thought 901 was where the library was, and in law school I decided to change my act, and I got lucky, and I got a great job. I got a great job at another Trojan law firm. So I went to interview at this law firm. Herb Kalmbach, who was a Trojan, Frank DeMarco, and Jim Knapp. Jim is the father of Professor Knapp, Tommy Knapp, was one of the greatest human beings ever. And Jim used to have these rules. Some of you have seen my little kind of rules, which are very ordinary, just things about manners and how you live your life. And Jim was the king of that. So I went to interview with them, and it was at the California Club. And of course, I had never been to a club. I didn't know what a club was. And the California Club had never seen the likes of me walking through those doors. And I walked through the doors. Herb Kalmbach at the time was the lawyer for President Nixon. So I was scared to death, intimidated beyond belief. But I had done a little bit of research and realized that Herb was a USC Trojan football freak. So I went into the interview, and of course all the Harvard kids and the Stanford kids and the Columbia kids, and I'm sitting there going, oh my God. The odds of me, I'm going to be sweeping the floors. There's just no way. So went in, we were talking about one thing versus the other, and he asked me who my favorite football player was. And I said, well, there's a guy named Tommy McDonald, who none of you will know about, who was the smallest flanker in the NFL in history at 5'9". And he wrote a book called They Pay Me to Catch Footballs. And he played for the Philadelphia Eagles. So again, my legal prowess and my academic background had led me to having conversation about the smallest guy who could throw footballs. And I said, there's a book out that you should read. He said, yeah, I haven't read it. So he was done with the interview. I ran out. I found the book. I wrote a little note. I drove back. I gave it to his secretary. His secretary's name was Ann Harvey. I'll never forget. Gave him the book. He called the next day and said, you're hired. Ann Harvey called. And I said, you mean I have more academic prowess? I'm smarter, I'm better than the Harvard kids, the Columbia kids, the Stanford? He said, no, he loved your book. Right? That's life. That's life.
It is those things. It's funny that Tom mentions that. I don't know if Tom remembers this, but when we honored him as our Entrepreneur of the Year in 2005, I think, I wrote him a note a year and a half later that sort of quoted some of the things back that he had talked about, running the past patterns, getting out of your comfort zone, all the things that our students should be hearing over and over again in terms of risk and fear. And so I just wrote him a note with no agenda, and I was selling my business, and it was a new chapter. And 2 days later, I got a FedEx. I open up the FedEx, and it's on personal stationery, Tom Barrack, and it just says, "Let's have lunch." He FedExes a handwritten note that just says, "Let's have lunch." And that was sort of the beginning of it. So it is doing those things you say you're going to do and sticking out. Tom once said, people will remember sending the book or sending the note or doing something more than if you made them $1 million. You said that. For you, it's probably $1 billion, but for $1 million, yeah, I'll probably remember somebody. But it is those things, and it's nice to see you walk it and talk it. And just because wildly successful people, they still have fears, they still have doubts, but they're constantly pressing the edge and getting out of their comfort level. And just in our talk, Laird, the way he talks to himself is interesting. He said something about, you don't fall off the board. You said, I get knocked off the board. I don't fall off the board.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just a way of putting it in your mind. And then the honor of a great failed attempt as well. There's great honor in that. So,
well, there's great honor in a failed attempt, but no honor in no attempt.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. And just such a great time to be 20 years old, 22 years old in this environment with so many things happening.
If we knew what we know and all.
we won't go down that path. Well, let's talk, because you've heard pain, both mental and physical, come up, and I want to sort of just touch on that briefly. In addition to getting pounded by waves, getting pounded by people to and from school, there is that endurance factor that you've always talked about, Tom, is that you're going to outwork people. And by the way, Laird's got the eye candy of the surf and everything like that. Tom comes with his own credentials. He is a surfer, heli-skiing, competitive polo player. We got a picture. So that's probably, wait, hold up. Go back to the wave. So that's probably a 10-footer. He's casual on that. Go to the next one. So speaking of the sport of kings, so there's Tom in the white.
When you talk about the sport of kings, by the way, they say polo is the game of gentlemen that's played by hooligans, and rugby is a game of hooligans played by gentlemen.
Look at Tom. You're looking get the guns out there on the right side there. So some days you're riding. What does that weigh? 1,900 pounds, 1,000 pounds of a horse. And some days you're on the white horse and you're the champion. And then the other days, go to the next slide. The other days, maybe the horse doesn't cooperate. And there's Tom on the left. Go one more, next slide, and get trampled by a horse. Tom, what kind of damage did that do?
It messed up my hair. I had blonde hair. No, it was a bad day. Rochelle and I were having a fight, so I wasn't concentrating. But, no, I broke my clavicle and my hand and 3 ribs. But the horse actually saved my life. You can see she stepped around me with 3 legs, as did my opponent's horse on the other side, and she just clipped me a little bit on the ribs. But the point is, polo is the same. And so why do I do it? By the way, it's the most difficult sport I've ever played in my life, because it's a preparation mental sport like what Laird does. And the truth is 99% of the sport, and it's a complicated sport because it's handicapped, and you have 4 players on each team, and each player you play in periods or quarters. You play 6 of them, so you need 6 horses per game. But 98% of the game is won off the field. It's the preparation of the horses. It's the preparation of the players. It's the strategy of the players. It's the equipment. It's the physical endurance. It's the mental ability to accept pain. So how do you prepare in what Laird does to take that impact zone and be able to respond? Well, physically for sure, right? So the amount of preparation you put into any of these kind of sports or events is directly proportionate to what you're going to get out of it. It's like school or a job or anything else. But I think what we both found is the two other components, the mental and spiritual piece of it, is mentally you can take your body to places it's never thought that it could go. And the way that mentally you get there is you've got to be in spiritual integrity. And I don't mean spiritual integrity by a religious belief. I just mean your code, whatever your man code is. And, you know, one thing that bonds us is we kind of have the same man code. I'm always learning from him. But when you bring those three things together, you can defy gravity. So in business, what is the competitive distinguishing characteristic? If you are an ordinary investor, so median returns, investing in the stock market, and trying to beat an index, you are an ordinary investor, you're an ordinary intermediator, and you're taking ordinary risk. To go beyond that, you have to be prepared to endure something that others don't want to do. You have to be prepared to go someplace others don't want to go. Why do they not want to go there? Because there's some pain that's going to be inflicted. Mental, spiritual, physical, emotional, the risk profile of what's in front of you that's daunting. So if you're a normal guy like I was, you say, I don't want to compete with all the brilliant people who are producing ordinary returns. I'm not going to do very well, right? Especially now with homogeneity information. I mean, you're all having an unbelievable education, but at the same time, everything is available to you on the net, and everything is being disintermediated. You don't even need life experiences anymore. So you can Uber to an Airbnb, have a host, call Post-its for your food to be delivered and watch Netflix. You don't really have to have a life experience anywhere along the line. But to get out of that node, you need to train yourself to take that abuse. And it is abuse, right? Just the disenfranchisement from your peers. We all want to be in a pack, but a pack is commonizing, right? That common denominator is a cancer. And it's, you know, I talk sometimes about the tiger on the terrace or the kitty in the kitchen. We all love, he is a tiger on the terrace. So when you're done with him, you're exhausted. One day with Laird is a week in a whirlpool, right? He never stops. It's energy, it's thought, it's action. He's straining you. When we're at his place, we start in the barn at 6:30 in the morning with bulletproof coffee and inventing some godforsaken thing that's going to cut you in half. And then you're physically and emotionally spent by the end of the day. But man, you are alive. And people opt for security and serenity. They do in relationships, they do in careers, you do in school. You say, hey, look, I can cruise through school, I can graduate, I get a diploma with all C's. What difference does it make? I'll figure it out later. But those building steps of just picking that spot and finding the road that's your road, it's happening more, right? I mean, what's happening with apps, what's happening in the world of social media is amazing. And it's a great entrepreneurial step forward. And tech is very interesting. But if I were advising many of you, I would say, unless you're the #1 coder in engineering school, you better have something else too. Not that easy, right? Not that simple. So maybe what happens at a time like this is the life experience of finding a different road eventually will give you that competitive advantage. The life experiences of things that don't seem to relate. And the more of those experiences, just like Laird said, when I look and say, who do I learn the most for? I hate conferences, I hate conventions, I hate being around financial guys. Because quite honestly, it's just a bunch of bullshit, right? It's self-empowered presence of everybody convincing each other how good they are, how much better they are, how much more empowered they are, and living on past acclaim. What I learned from Laird is all those other tools that I don't have that I need to better myself, and pushing through that comfort zone, right? What we all hate, leading to the edge. You master something and you say, whew, thank God I feel safe here. And safe is Pac-Man. Safe will just erode your self-confidence beyond all belief. And at your age, you don't see it. At my age, I see it a lot. You find mediocrity in people over 50 who have just decided to take their foot off the throttle. It's not about money, and it's not about power. It's about relevance. It's about relevance. You all want to be relevant. The three of us need to be relevant. You do what you do. You push yourself through these comfort barriers every day because you need to be relevant. But being relevant is all about risk. So it's preparation. It's preparation.
I mean,
You know what
we
the
hear
two
these
most
things.
dangerous words are, right?
Sorry?
The two most dangerous words?
What are those?
Good job.
Good job. Good is the enemy of great. Michael,
Good job.
It's true. And most people, as Laird sort of said, we're wired to do certain things. We're wired to seek the familiar, to seek the comfort, because that's the way the species continues and reproduces, and you build great homes. But you got to continually push the envelope, or else you're going to sort of lead that middle life. And by the way, the middle is very crowded. You know, you want to be a good lawyer? Good luck. There's millions of those. But doing something at the extremes, and I don't mean necessarily physically, but just doing something that is extraordinary, there actually is less competition up there in that rarefied air. It's not easier, but there are fewer people competing for it. I want to give time to the students, so I'll skip ahead. By the way, speaking of injuries, you've had a few.
Yep.
Who does your stitches?
Well, after a while, I started just doing them myself because I was doing them better than the guys at the ER. So if I can get both hands to them, I can do them. When I can't get both hands, I'll usually go see a vet. They stitch better.
Sort of said your friend's a badass if he's doing his own stitching.
I got Novocaine. Come on.
Yeah, I'm sure. Probably a swig of whiskey
No,
or
no.
something.
I learned some tricks.
We would talk about pyramids and death and risking your life. I think we're running a little bit short of time. Maybe one of the students will ask you about that, because it's a story that, if it were a movie, you wouldn't believe it. So if you get a chance to Google that, it's him saving a very dear friend's and co-surfer's life in the most extreme circumstances. You just have to look it up. But the guy's leg gets sliced by a fin from heel to the back of his knee, and it's this wide open. Laird, in a rush to save his life, takes off his suit, the only thing he has on, to make a tourniquet. Swims just the death-defying distance to go get the jet ski to pull him back. I mean, it's just this drama after drama. You can't believe what's happening. And at the end, after being drugged, 5 football fields underwater by wave after wave. How big were the waves at the time?
I mean, we don't like to talk about that stuff, but it was, they were big, 80, 100, something like that. I don't know.
And just pounding.
Too big to measure.
And pounding.
Yeah.
And
as big as we've seen.
And I would love for him to tell it, because it's going to take 10 minutes. And at the end of this, he finally gets his friend on the jet ski. They get back up to shore. They've called paramedics. The helicopters come in. This guy's leg is, it's severed. And they get him into the ambulance, physically exhausted, mental exhausted, just, almost died. What did you do at the end of the day?
We went back out.
We went back out surfing.
Yes.
After you loaded your friend into the ambulance.
Well, it was an opportunity that, hasn't come since and may never come again. So we had to take advantage of that moment.
Well, that's the perfect segue to this. And Laird is all about the opportunity and understanding what's in front of him. And Tom, you do it in business. Lairds are so vivid when they present themselves. And Laird says, the way he chooses wave is on instinct, and he knows what the best wave is for him. So let's talk, before we go to questions, and students get ready with your questions, let's talk about what happened in Chopu, in Tahiti. First of all, just give us some basic dynamics for people who aren't surfers. How do you measure a wave? Because you always hear different things. Is it the front? Is it the back? How do you measure a wave?
Well, waves are, it's such an ambiguous thing, because they're 4 dimensions. There's just hard to, but the face height is a reflection of how big the wave is. We go to the back height, but like in a place in Tahiti, there's no backs on them. So it's more about the ferociousness of the wave. That's it's more. I always use the dog theory about Great Danes and pit bulls. Great Danes are much bigger, but pit bulls are more ferocious. So it's, I mean, waves are really measured in their ferociousness, and then you have 60-foot, 80-foot, waves that are gentler. Then you have 40-foot ones that are breaking on razor blades. So it just depends on, each one's different and every location's different.
And speaking of Tahiti, what made this area unique? I mean, how deep is the water as that wave crashes?
Well, the water where the wave lands in Tahiti is 6 or 8 feet deep, or maybe 10 feet deep. But it's the way the barrier reefs grow. They grow in order to absorb the wave's energy, so they have the perfect shape to absorb the wave all in one moment. So the wave actually will just rise up and dissipate all its power almost instantaneously. Unlike most other ways that waves are dissipated through beaches and continental shelves and all those kind of things, the reefs are really designed to absorb the entire wave's energy.
So we're going to take a look at an excerpt from a movie. So in Maui, at Sprex and at Jaws, you see stuff that's 50, 70, 80 feet. And in this case, it wasn't as high, but it was the volume and the depth and the weight of this thing that's never been seen before.
The ferociousness.
The ferociousness. Yeah. It was mean. Even though it looked, I mean, it's a work of art. It's the most beautiful wave you've ever seen.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the other thing that's not true is it's breaking on a bed of razors.
Yeah.
When he talks about 6 or 8 feet, when the water is running up, if he would have fallen that wave, he's sliced into 1,000 pieces.
Yeah, it's live coral. So when you hit, you're torn. Like somebody died a month before that I rode that wave, and they got their face torn off the bottom. So you can fall and be okay, or you can fall and not be okay.
And Laird puts himself, talk about preparation, it's not just the practice, but he puts himself in the places, in the situations that are ripe for large waves. He will go anywhere on Earth, and he doesn't live in Tahiti, but he knew the storm system that was coming in. It was unique, and he and his team got there. So this is about four minutes of a chapter from Riding Giants, which included, this is the conclusion of the movie, and this is considered the greatest wave ever ridden. So please roll this clip on Chopu. If it gives us chills, I can only imagine how that feels for you to relive that every time. Students,
it still makes me nauseous.
What is it? Makes you nauseous?
Yeah, it does.
Students, come up, questions for Tom and Laird. We've got about 10, 15 minutes. Jump up. There are microphones on both sides. Students, go ahead.
My name is Daniel Clark, and I'm a senior at the Marshall School of Business. So before I start, I'd like to thank you for being here, for your time.
I appreciate that.
And I'm a surfer too. I grew up in Huntington Beach, and some waves I almost died too. So I know how you feel because the lead strangled me. So that's that. So I have 2 questions for you, for Tom. The first thing is
one question each.
Okay. So maybe lead to another one, but so one is that I'm sure you guys know this company called Starbucks, and Howard Schultz. He's a CEO, and he got rejected by 243 banks before he got funded. So without his courage to keep going and have that grit, he would have never succeeded, and we would never enjoy the cup of latte that we enjoy every day. So my question is, how do you see the light in the darkest hour? Because that's something that I'm learning myself, and also I'm sure you've learned that. So I want to hear it from you. So.
Yeah, I don't think you do see the light at the darkest hour. I think you see the light when the light comes. So, right, I mean, life is tiny little baby steps, and those baby steps lead to courage and energy and a reputation. And you just need to keep taking them and defy resistance. So, he got through that because he wasn't really concerned about making money. He wasn't really concerned about building a gigantic company. He had a vision, and he was going to drive to that vision no matter what. But what happens is the vision changes, the adaptability of Laird in a wave, right? And waves are exactly like life. It's like all of your lives. So when he's out in the lineup, the wind is going one way, the currents are going another, the swell is building or diminishing. You've got a lot of professionals and you have a lot of amateurs, and all of those factors are in his mind. And he's adapting every second, right? Just like Howard did. And it's what you guys have to do, because it leads someplace else. I mean, I told you I went to work for a law firm. And at the end of my first business experience I was there on a Saturday morning because, again, my idea was having more pain. So I thought they'd be more impressed with my physical prowess than my mental prowess. So on a Saturday morning, the senior partner came in and looked at me and said, by the way, you're kind of from the Middle East, aren't you? I said, well, yes, sir, I am. He said, well, do you know anything about gas liquefaction plants? I said, it's funny you ask. It happens to be my specialty. Of course, I had never even heard the words gas liquefaction plant. And he said, terrific, I'm sending you to Saudi Arabia next week. I said, that's always been my dream. Thanks so much.
Where is it again?
Yeah, went back, got the map. So I go home to my little Lebanese immigrant mother, who I'm the first kid that ever went to college, first kid that went to law school. Now I had a job in downtown LA. So I came home and I said, Mom, I've got this most amazing opportunity. She said, this is great, what's happening? I said, I'm going to Saudi Arabia. She burst into tears, right? Off to Saudi Arabia, away from the pack. I have no idea what's going on. I have no idea what a gas liquefaction plant is. But I figure I'm going to be the best finance lawyer at this gas liquefaction plant. One thing led to another. That never happened. I ended up playing squash with a young prince. I didn't know he was a prince. My boss came down and said, by the way, do you know how to play squash? I said, yeah, that's one thing I do know how to do. That led to something else. The thing that was something else didn't work out. That led to another thing, and it just kept driving. But the light never came. It wasn't one day that I woke up and said, I'm enlightened. It still doesn't come, right? You just keep driving, and as you adapt, if you just push that boulder, if you attack your own comfort barriers, and you all know where they are, right? You get stuck in the middle of saying, this is pretty cool. I'm pretty good right now, and I can duck. I can stay in this safe place, and nobody's going to mess with me. But where you find life is on that edge. Where Howard found life was at that edge. It's going to take you someplace. It may not be a latte. It'll be something else, but you'll get there. But you never see the light until the light comes.
Thank you. One last question.
No. Sorry, guys. We gotta split it up. Next.
Well, and the best laid plans are the ones most easily modified. So those are good plans because nothing ever goes as planned. It's just the ones that change the best. That's a good plan. The one that you can change the best. That's the best plan.
All right.
Thank you so much for your time.
Tom.
Good evening. My name is James. I'm an undeclared freshman, and thank you so much for coming. I was truly inspired by this speech. I'm sure many of us are. I want to ask Tom. During your speech, you said that it's not very useful to be good at everything, to be good at overall everything. So jack of all trades. But I want to ask, to be very successful, do you think it's important to have many different kinds of experience, many different exposure to many different things, and then choose something that you're passionate about? So really focus on as many things as possible and then do something?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. Because what happens, and I worked for a guy, started in business life working for the Bass family in Fort Worth. And one of the great investors of all times was a guy named Richard Rainwater. So I was ready for, finance 717. So I get to Fort Worth, and I say, okay, Richard, what are we doing now? He says, we're reading the newspaper, and you're going to sit in my office and listen. I said, that's interesting. One after another, a guy would come in who was a sausage maker. Another guy would come in who was a satellite factory maker. Another guy would come in who was a banker in Bangladesh. And I'm saying, this is the most worthless thing I've ever seen. Don't we have a theme? So we're going to discover themes by being in the milieu, right? So the life experiences that you create, although they don't relate at the time, give you texture. And from that texture, you'll start taking those fabrics and you'll weave your own tapestry. But if you don't have texture, there's no tapestry, right? Which is my only fear of the internet, and I'm not sounding like a dinosaur, but I promise I have Snapchat. Where's Rochelle? She's got my Snapchat. But if you just live your life virtually, eventually life is going to switch to the premium being on those people that have those life experiences. Because it's not the trophy but the chase, it's not the trophy but the race, right? It's not the end result that gives you that modicum of euphoria. It's the process of what you went through to get there, right? It's the mathematical cadence in solving a problem. So the more different experiences that you have, the better you're going to be at what you finally find is your passion. But my message is, along the way, concentrate on your strengths, not your weaknesses.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Jackson. Thank you so much. This has been such a treat. And this is a question for both or either of you. When it comes to fear, how do you tread the line between capitalizing on it and really using it to your benefit and taking risk and making it really valuable and allowing it to kind of overcome you and impede you in terms of what you're doing?
I think that has to do with the situation that you're in and your experience and what, is it going to be? I mean, there's a time to know, when to hold them and know when to fold them. So, and that comes from experience. But when the odds are bad and you see that it's not going to, there is no chance, only a fool keeps going into a wall. So at a certain point, it's like you have to know when it behooves you to use that as strength and make moves, or when you just have to go, okay, well, this isn't working, I have to adjust. And again, it's, being able to modify as you go. It's that improvisational aspect to know, and that comes from experience. That comes from and assessing the situation you're in. So it will vary every time, and you'll learn through trial and error, but you're gonna find that you'll know instinctually. You'll be able to, you'll have a voice that tells you. I mean, we have instincts that tell us when danger is imminent, even when we can't see it, because it's part of what we've developed over our evolution. And I think we've lost some of that. And I think when you start listening to that, that's something that really can help you in your decision making especially when you're in a moment of danger. No matter what no matter what kind of danger, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, you listen to the voice that's inside of you that knows more than your consciousness, and I think that will never prove you wrong. So
Thank you.
yeah.
All right, next question.
My name is Ben Brown. I'm a second-year student in the MBA program here. Thank you very much for coming out. I hate to be the downer in the crowd, but my question revolves around failure. Two of my best friends started businesses immediately out of college, and they hit rock bottom. They not only lost everything financially, but they lost everything spiritually. They seemed to be simply mere shells of themselves, and it was something that really concerned me. And as an entrepreneur starting a business out of school, it's something that inevitably I want to be able to cope with failure. And my question's for you, having faced adversity to a tremendous extent, I'm sure, in both of your careers. What do you do when you reach rock bottom? How do you cope with that, and how do you recover?
Well, I'll give you just a quick story, because I've hit rock bottom so many times. But you don't know, right? When you hit rock bottom, it's not like you have a conversation to yourself and say, "Oh, this is all going to be okay. It's going to be over here tomorrow." You are tapped out. You're emotionally done. But it's youth that's the problem, because when you're young, you think in real time that that's the end. There's a beginning and a middle and an end, right? As time goes on, you learn the process that it's like a bunch of grapes. There's good grapes and there's bad grapes. And in that bunch, sometimes you're going to get good grapes and sometimes you're going to be bad grapes. And when things are great, I can guarantee you one thing. Eventually, they're going to turn down. And when things are bad, I can guarantee you another thing. Eventually, it's going to turn up. But just to give you an example of how the cadence of life, one time I had started a business and I had a wild partner, 6'6" Texan, one of the most amazing men that I've ever known. And we had a real estate development business. I wasn't a real estate guy, I was a finance guy. And we were building 4 million square feet of stuff, all of this was in the 70s, everywhere. But my partner was spending money faster than I could print it. So I was going, whoa, we need to do something. And this was like my first big deal. I just come back out of the desert, you know, that I had a great time with the Arabs, but they didn't realize you had to pay lawyers, anything. So I came back with 2 camels and a couple goats and a sheep, but this was my big opportunity. And my partner was in Switzerland, so I engineered this deal and I had sold it to the Canadians, a company called Oxford, and this was nirvana. So I was looking and saying, this is my first big hit. I get Lonnie out of the deal. I'm going to be a hero. All the rest of the guys who had been partying and having a great time are going to envy me because I'm going to look like a really big deal. And a week before I was supposed to close, I got a call from our broker who said, by the way, your CFO just tied up this huge deal. I'm really, congratulations, this is great. I said, what do you mean my CFO tied up a huge deal? So you guys just bought this. I said, that wasn't me. Are you sure it was us? So I called my CFO, and obviously what had happened is these guys thought the company was selling. They put a deal together to go buy this themselves. So I followed my mom's old motto, which is never let good judgment get in the way of a tantrum. I threw them all through the door, threw their stuff in the middle of the atrium, set it on fire, and fired everybody. And then good judgment came, and I said, I'm cooked. I'm done. I don't have anything to sell. I fired the whole executive staff. So I called Don Love, who was the chairman of Oxford, and I had hit absolutely the bottom. Right? It was over. I couldn't have made payroll for 3 more weeks. So I had 5 days that I was really looking and saying, number one, the worst thing is I just blew through everybody's money. So we've got 4,000 employees that are all going to be out of work. Second worst thing is all these friends that I wanted to show how smart I was are going to see that I'm really an idiot. Third thing is just the embarrassment of the moment. So I thought and I worked, and there was no light. So I said, you know what? You just have to resort to honesty. There's just no place else to go, right? At the end of the day, all there is honesty. So I called Don Love, and I said, I need to come and see you because the deal's off. He said, I'm too busy. I'm going to Naples, Florida. I don't have time to see you. I said, I need to see you. Your deal's supposed to close on Monday. You can't close it. He said, okay, don't waste a lot of my time. I'll give you an hour to come up. So I'll never forget, I walked up, and those were the 2 worst days in my life. Because what I was thinking is I should go back and rehire the guys. And if I rehired them, everything would be fine. So I walked in. I said, Mr. Love, I'm sorry the deal can't go through. I made a terrible mistake. I fired my entire staff. So there's nothing to sell you. There's the assets, but I don't have a team. He never picked it. He was reading the paper, never picked his head up. He said, why'd you fire them? I said, because they were disloyal. He said, get out of here. I don't have time. We're closing on Monday. Goodbye. From that point on, there was never a time when I hit the bottom or I had bad news that I didn't deliver the bad news first. So that empowering fact that comes out of failure, saying I can't go any lower. And at that moment of integrity, the universe will save you. But the universe saves you out of integrity, right? I mean, I use this word with all of you, and I don't use it loosely because I promise you, at this point in your life, it's practicing it. You don't naturally have it, right? So your friends who are suffering, they're suffering because embarrassment and ridicule and unfulfilled expectations. All it is an unfulfilled expectation, right? So you want to be loved by 14 Victoria's Secret models every day of your life, and that doesn't happen. Are you depressed? It's just your expectations are out of line for where you are at the moment, right? So I've just found that if you lose expectations, you're never disappointed. Let the universe drag you to where it is. That failure is a good thing for you. Sometimes we need to be humbled. Laird on that wave, I mean, can you imagine being humbled after you conquer it, but you're even more humbled when you conquer, because you realize the difference between winning and losing is nothing. It's nothing. It's happenstance of the universe. It's the effort, right? It's going to that edge with style, with class, with elegance, with preparation. And if you fail, it's a great thing. You're young. You've got what is the fear? You pick it up and you do it again. You don't have 17 kids waiting at home. You don't have gigantic financial burdens behind you. You're going to be so equipped. You're getting the best education. You have the best tools. You have the best professors. you're going to have all the arrows in your quiver. Just go kick it, right?
Thank you, and fight on.
Great advice. Last question on this side. I'm sorry, we're running a little bit late. Last question.
Hi, Tom and Laird. Thank you so much for coming today. This question is for both of you. I really want to know what was the process of you realizing what your extraordinary strength was, and you knew at least there was a chance that you could succeed in it.
Well, for me, I don't know if I knew that I had some extraordinary skill. There was no revelation like that. It was more that I just knew that I was going to do something. I had the belief and the faith that I was gonna do something, and I didn't know the exact route and exactly what, but I was pretty confident that I was gonna, do something extraordinary, and it was more about not about anything that I was doing. I mean, me being special, but that I was going to be able to do something special. That it was, and it had to do more with that it was going to be something that I was going to do. And I was going to do that because I believed I could do that. And I think that really was birthed from my mother. I think my mom gave me the faith to believe in myself, to believe in, and an imagination. I think the combination of having an imagination and that belief in myself, but not that I was great, but that I could do something extraordinary, and that wasn't a possibility, and that having an imagination definitely allowed me to believe that I could do something, because there's so many extraordinary things out there that you can see through using your imagination or watching other people's imagination. So that was for me, that was the seed of my, the beginning of my tree,
Yeah, for me, I think I never knew. I still don't know. So I honestly feel very ordinary. When I look at my toolkit, I say it's a very ordinary toolkit. So what does that mean? I have to work 5 times as hard as everybody else. It's that simple. I've got to be better prepared. I have to be more adaptable. I have to take this chain of the little things that you're all learning: manners, elegance, punctuality, timeliness, courtesy, right? If people like you, this sounds prehistoric, right? But if people like you, you can be half as good as the great person that nobody likes. And liking in today's world has to do with reliability, right? It has to do with trustworthiness. It has to do with honesty. It has to do with transparency. All these things that you hear, that you're working on in tiny little pieces, but it's practicing. It doesn't come. And I can guarantee you, when I was in school, when I was sitting where you were, I didn't have a clue. I was a pre-med major. Quantitative chemistry was the hardest class at USC at the time. So all my buddies said, no problem, you take it at Long Beach State during the summer. I said, really? Is it okay? I went to Long Beach State. After 8 days, I took the first exam, F. I said, this is not a good sign. If this is the easiest class at Long Beach State. So I said, great, right? With Lebanese mothers, there were two: you'd be a doctor or a lawyer. There's only 2 choices. So I said, great, being a lawyer. I didn't have a clue. When I was a lawyer, I didn't have a clue. There was, a guy named George Lefko. For any of you who are in law school, I took a finance class, and it didn't have the elegance of a finance, business, economy class like you have the privilege with Professor Plotz to have today. It was basic legal finance, and it stimulated me. And I said, that's interesting. But along the way, I still never knew. But what I learned was I could outperform by out-preparing, by being ready, take more abuse than most, because I wasn't disappointed by failure. I could live with failure, and that I would practice this necklace of the little invisible things, right? How do you have somebody, for those of you who are dating, you go out on a date, and your boyfriend or your girlfriend is being unbelievably gracious and sweet and kind and unbelievably wonderful to you, and treating the waiter or the waitress like dirt. And you say, there's something strange with this, right? It doesn't all add up. Because the cadence of how people are with invisible people. Laird could be out in 30-foot waves and little kids and girls and people who are just starting to surf, and he will stop, help them, organize them, take that cadence of whoever they are, right? He's never out of cadence. So you don't know. You're not going to know. No matter, you're in graduate school and you're focused on exactly everything that you should be doing, and I think Dr. Nikias would tell you the same thing. If whatever your major is, don't take 1 unit more than you have to in that major. Do something else. And something else is it's gonna take you someplace, but don't worry about it. It's gonna go. The universe is gonna drag you where it wants to go and then choose it to be, and you'll be a genius. Like us, I had no idea that I was gonna ever end up, I never thought this was a business. I thought it was a deal. I never wanted to leave Fort Worth. I was working with the Bass. I said, this is the greatest thing that ever happened. An idiot from Culver City, he grew up in an 800 square foot house with one of the wealthiest families in the world. Why would they want to kick me out into this idiotic finance business with a bunch of Wall Street buffoons who are just focused on internal rate of return every day of their life, right? The universe dragged me there, and it seemed to work out, and I declared victory. Yeah, this is what I've always wanted to do. I never had a clue.
Thank you.
Great answers. I'm sorry we don't have time to get to everybody.
But,
Thanks for
but
those
I do want to say one thing.
Hold on. We're not done yet.
I just want to thank, first of all, I want to thank you guys for coming, and I really love Tom, and my thing I think I respect him most about him is that, all the smartest people always say that they don't know anything. And Tom is very sharp, and there's nothing ordinary about his toolkit. So don't let him fool you for 1 second. I would like to say that, and I would also like to say that I think it's I have a friend that I really admire, similar to Tom, that I look up to, and he says it's better to be lucky than good. And if you're good and lucky, well, shame on you. But part of having luck is believing. And I think that's something really important, that no matter what you do, you have to believe. Because if you don't believe, there is absolutely no way that you will ever arrive anywhere that you want to go. And you have to have an idea of where you want to go. Because there's no way that there's no way that I am where I am, or Tom is where he is, or anyone is where they are without having some idea of where they wanted to go. Because you don't just walk up one day and go, wow, look what I just landed in Paris, but I didn't get on a plane to Paris. So you got to have an idea of where you want to go, and you got to believe that you can get there, and don't mind a little luck, and believe that you can have that luck, and you'll get it. And that's great. I just want to. That's my
Great
last
advice.
party.
Great.
Words.
Let's hear it for them. Hold on. We're not done yet. We're not done yet. We're not done yet. We got a couple minutes to thank them, and it is great to see two great friends. One of the things I watched on Laird a while ago, and I've been a fan of Laird's for a while. He was on a show called Iconoclasts on Sundance, and it always is bringing people together from two different disciplines that really create the most interesting conversations. And to get this opportunity was really, really special. As soon as I said we have Tom and Laird coming, this student said, I would give anything to meet them. Oh my God. So I wanted him to come up and do a special presentation. Andrew Pokesay, are you around? Andrew? Please welcome Andrew Pokesay, your classmate.
On behalf of all of us students, entrepreneurs, and surfers, thank you for joining us tonight. Your stories and inspiration mean a lot to us, and more than you'd ever think. So we have 2 USC surfing awards, Big Wave Risk Awards, and hopefully you're still into shortboards. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Oh, how cool. Thanks. Great job. Thanks.
Come out front.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Come out front here. Come out front here. That is legit right there. Woo. You don't have a trophy like that. I know you've
I
a lot of
don't
things.
really have any trophies.
We have those made for you. You want to get a
Now I
picture?
do.
Andrew, get a picture?
This is cool.
Where's the cameraman? Where's William? Where's William? All right. Can you get it? Here, right here.
Beautiful.
All right. And one fight on. Fight on. All right. All right.
Thanks,
So we got
guys.
one more thing
Yeah,
before we
thank you.
wrap up.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
One more thing.
Great, thanks. Great idea.
So,
Thank you.
so Tom and Laird are, they're at the top of their game. They, among the best at what they do, and they appreciate talent in all forms. And I know Tom in particular loves to see great talent. And so we thought, as a small way of thanking you for doing this, we wanted to bring someone else who was extraordinary. And one of the greatest investors and advisors of all time, probably the greatest surfer of all time. I wanted to bring my favorite trumpet player of all time, one of the best musicians you'll see on the planet. Please welcome smooth jazz artist Rick Braun. Rick! One more time, it's been a great night. It's been a great night. Students, you're welcome to come up and meet Tom and Laird at the front of the stage. Thank you, band. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Tom. Let's hear for Tom and Laird. Have a great week. Fight on.